On this episode of Edge of the Web.
We have this thing called the curse of knowledge. Once I learn something, it's hard to remember that not everybody else has learned it too. So I begin to act as though everybody knows the same things I do.
Okay.
So I'll use jargon and I'll leave out impertinent details. Basically, I'm prone to under communication. I'm prone to not shedding light on everything. It's a bias of my brain, which means you need to take responsibility by asking clarifying questions, and I need to be cognizant of the fact that I'm going to leave things out. So I should ask people, "Hey, what'd you hear me say?" Because I want to make sure I was really clear.
Right.
We're all under the curse of knowledge.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right, so welcome back to the Edge of the Web. We're broadcasting from Edge Media Studios located in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. Every week we bring you the latest marketing trends from some top marketing influencers from around the planet, especially in the digital marketing space. Check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. We're powered by Site Strategics, the title sponsor of the show and the pioneers in the agile marketing methodology. So if you're interested in what agile marketing is, it's results-based marketing that shifts and adjusts based on iterative changes and results. Who knew? So if you want to find out more about agile marketing and Site Strategics, go over to Site Strategics, S-I-T-E, strategics.com. Actually, you can search agile marketing method, and you might find us there too. How about that? Ranking on Google. Go over there and we'll be happy to sit down and talk to you about potentially your marketing success. So we go through and have a free online hour consultation, be able to go through maybe some digital action items for you so you can actually start rolling with some better rankings or better conversions, whatever we find. So give us a shout over at Site Strategics or go to, just give us a call, 877-SEO for web or 877-736-4932. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. I'm the CEO and owner of Site Strategics. And I'll tell you why we do this show on a regular basis. Every week, we're bringing some great minds to the table, be able to talk about some digital marketing techniques or cultural techniques in the workplace, because the digital realm and the knowledge workspace that we're in now, we have to be able to unpack myths about digital marketing, as well as myths and some good concepts about how to work together in the knowledge space. So that's why we do what we do, along with the fact that we are constantly keeping our own powder dry, and it's an R&D process for us. We always are learning from the individuals that we interview with, and it's a bit selfish. We want to learn more so we can actually do better for our clients. That's why we do what we do. I want to introduce to you a guest in studio, and he's also a second-timer to our studio. It's Max Yoder, co-founder and CEO of Lessonly. Sir, how are you doing?
It's great to be here. Thanks, Aaron.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for coming in.
I love being in here. I talked to my teammates today. I was like, I love going into this studio. I like
fantastic.
to make music for fun, so I like to be around audio equipment, and especially well-done audio equipment. This is excellent.
Oh, I appreciate that greatly. We put a lot of love in here, but we don't get that many people coming in on a regular basis. So whenever we're able to connect with somebody locally here in Indianapolis, it's great to be able to sit in.
Love it.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
More than welcome. Well, we had a number of news items to actually go through before we dig into your book, because we want to unpack as much as we can in there.
Yeah.
But there's always some news items that we want to touch base on. All right. So let's take you through the latest marketing trends.
I was very excited to start my reportings.
This week's trending topics.
Have you used your digital assistant in 2019 yet? Have you? Have you talked to your Alexa or talked to your Google Home? I'm probably triggering. Okay, Google, let me just trigger all the devices as we're listening. From Search Engine Journal, from the author, Matt Southern, 72% of people have used voice search through a digital assistant in 2019. A study from Microsoft on consumer adoption of voice technology in 2019 showed that most people are using voice search. Microsoft 2019 Voice Report analyzes the adoption and usage of voice-enabled technology such as smart speakers and digital assistants. According to a report, 75% of the households will have at least one smart speaker by 2020. Now, just think about that. How many households do we have? I mean, I don't even know the stats, but
Me
we got
neither.
390 million people, right? How many households? Let's say 170 million,
Yeah.
right? That's a nice
quick math,
All
yeah.
right, very good. And you're saying that 75% of these households are going to have a smart speaker in there by 2020. That's amazing. In
I
its
got
own right.
one, and I'm scared of them, and I have one.
We've got 4. You got 5. Wow. I mean, we got. This is creepy.
5 in the building?
No. Well, we got 2 or 3 in the building. We got 5 in our house.
Okay.
1 in each of the kids' rooms.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I getting creepy now? Let's get creepier now. It is extreme, says Noah, our producer. But literally, we're instead of going upstairs and talking to our kids, we're paging our kids through the smart speaker. We're calling them down for dinner. They all have their own little connections and their own music play, and we can drop in on them and talk to them whenever we want to.
Yeah.
Are we just lazy?
I don't know. I mean, that was happening 20 years ago. So it wasn't internet connected. I mean, I remember my aunt's house. She had a button on the wall, the buzzer.
Absolutely.
The internet connection part is the part that scares me.
Yep.
So I have an Alexa that when my speakers aren't turned on, she's not turned on.
There you
So
go.
the speakers are turned on. We're listening to music. We turn out the speaker. She's dead for lack of a better term.
Yep, absolutely. The usage of this is amazing. What these stats are showing: 72% of the people use voice search through a personal digital assistant. 35% of people have used voice search through a smart home speaker. Well, that's fantastic. So we have assistants that are learning you, right, and learning your behaviors and your predilections. Then you have the ease of use with a smart speaker. 68% of the people say they search for quick facts. 65% look up directions. 52% say they're looking for a product or service. 44% say they're conducting additional research for products. 31% say they're using the voice search to compare products. And I'm going to throw another stat in there. About 80% of the kids are making fart noises on their smart speaker.
No doubt.
But here's the deal. Your fear is warranted because all that's monitored. All that, it will be monetized at some point in time. We have I always share a story about when we were talking about, my wife and I were talking about pool filters in the backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And never did we search on pool filters.
Yeah.
But the smart speaker's there, and guess what showed up on ad space for Amazon?
Yeah.
A number of selections of pool filters. So
I think that's why Apple has such a big advantage here.
Yeah.
They don't need our data. They would use it for their own reasons, but they're not selling it to folks.
All right.
If they just could make the HomePod something that would play Spotify, I'd have one. But until Spotify's on there, I'm out.
boy, that was a failure to launch, wasn't it?
That's too bad.
Yeah, it really is.
Because I would have them on all the time because I know that's not how they make their money.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, a number of different concerns there, but the sheer adoption rate and the prediction that 75% of the houses are going to have a smart speaker in there, we're talking about adoption of technology, and I can't even remember the adoption curve scientific method.
You talking about crossing the chasm?
Yes.
Yeah, like the early adopters and
Exactly.
so forth.
It's so expedited now, so exponentially. So we're seeing smart speakers being adopted within 3 years, where the iPhone took like 8 to be.
I didn't have one until 4 or 5 years after it launched.
Right. So there's such a exponential movement now of technology and single source purchasing and the wearable technology. Yep. Everything's moving so fast now.
Yeah, I wonder if it's easy come, easy go. Anything that comes fast, I wonder, does it go fast? But time will tell.
Yeah, time will tell. Speaking of something that time will tell, The Hustle has an article regarding Facebook. Check this out. So Facebook Watch, the tech giant expects to receive the largest ever fine from a data breach in the U.S. Check this out. So Facebook said that it expects to be fined up to $5 billion by the FTC for its never-ending nightmare of privacy violations. The penalty will be a record against a technology company by the agency whose biggest fine doled out to date against a tech company was $22 million, and a sign that the U.S. is ready to push back on big tech in a big way. That's $5 billion.
$22 million
Yeah,
to $5 billion?
That's a big jump.
Oh my! What have they been doing?
I know. Well, there have been a number of different data breaches. None were as public as about a year ago there. But the fine even, check this out, the fines have to affect Facebook eventually. Well, a fine even in the low billions is yet another measly slap on the wrist in the annals of Facebook revenue, right? They actually are looking at, they have about 2.7 billion using the apps each month and brings about 56 billion in annual revenue. So 5 billion is a big chunk, but at the same time, you got a tech giant that is worth that much on an annual basis.
Oh, they're profitable as heck, yeah.
So what happens whenever the cost versus what do you want to say? The cost versus pain scenario here, they're not too concerned about the data breaches nearly as much. If they can actually weather the storm and be able to just take on fines.
Yeah, I got to think value-based selling is kind of the answer here. Value-based selling is like, what is the company willing to pay to solve the problem versus are we going to charge everybody the same thing? Yep. And if the value-based fining may be the answer here, which is if it doesn't hurt, it's not doing the job.
Yeah, it's got to hurt. Otherwise, they're going to keep on. The security is not going to be there. And, more importantly, the consumers have to be aware, and the pushback has to be aware from the consumer side of things.
Sure.
That's where the pain's really going to hit.
Yeah, and, we say actions speak louder than words. But it doesn't seem that way right now. What we're seeing is the actions of Facebook are one direction. Their words are this way, and this way kind of saves them. It's not the actions that seem to matter. The words of "we're going to do better this time" seems to keep working. So it's kind of confounding the principle.
And they certainly rolled out some great PR right after that data breach. I mean, you saw all the Facebook advertising that they. So this was not a singular event.
No,
FTC is getting much more painful towards their finding, but it's still not really hitting them at the pocketbooks. I'm just concerned that we're not nearly as secure as they say we are.
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt. That's pretty consistent, right?
Yeah.
Since they started.
All right, from Search Engine Journal with Matt Southern again. Byte, the follow-up to Vine, brings sending out Byte invites right now. They're beginning to send these out. Now, Byte is a reboot of Vine for listeners who haven't heard about Vine and what Vine was. It was a looping video service where you can actually record 6 seconds of video. And the artistry of actually using it in a social space was unbelievable how creative people were for the 6 seconds of video they had.
It sure was. I mean, they say that creativity is bringing a constraint in or pulling a constraint out. And this was, let's bring a real constraint in. You got 6 seconds and it'll loop. And people did amazing things.
Absolutely. I always harken back to Bat Dad, but I mean, there were so many.
Bat Dad was funny.
Yeah, it was too cool. And I started doing that at the house and scaring the bejesus out of the kids. Anyway.
There was a lot of joy on Vine. There was a lot of joy on Vine. I'm sure there was also a lot lack of joy, but everything I saw brought me a lot of joy.
And Vine's even being repurposed in YouTube for Vine collages.
Sure.
And my kids watch it all the time.
Which are pretty darn funny.
Yep. And TikTok, yeah, absolutely. So Byte, a reboot of Vine, from the same creator, has sent out the first 100 invites to its closed beta. The app is simply described as a looping video app and is expected to function the way Vine used to. According to the creator, Dan Hoffman, Byte is already on track to being the true Vine reboot users have been hoping for. So Vine has actually managed to maintain an avid fan base since the shutdown by Twitter 2 years ago. That's something to be as a testament. I mean, you see such an atrophy of platforms, MySpace, right? But there's so many. I mean, Snapchat lost ground so quickly. Right after the IPO, I mean, it kind of flatlined from user base. And now we're dealing with a social media platform that has a historical fan base that's going to jump right back in.
Yep.
You're dealing with now these nuanced social media platforms that are going to have a higher loyalty base. Like Quora.
I would have never guessed that Vine would have such a dedicated, but it's like it was a certain kind of art, and it was a certain kind of art that you could only make with Vine. And I think those artists really enjoyed making that kind of art. Yeah,
that's where these specialty platforms, the environments and mediums are going to make way, and that's where you're going to start getting as a user. You're going to move towards what really you enjoy as opposed to the mass consumption. It's going to get more into these
more
fractional.
specialized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's writing the headline right now about Byte biting the dust? Because somebody's already prepping for that, and they think they're very clever in the newsroom.
Yeah,
I hope it doesn't happen, but somebody's already prepping that headline.
You better believe it. I'm sure they're going to take a bite out of every
Bite takes a bite out of their next acquisition. Yeah.
I'm
You
sorry.
got it.
That was a bad dad
They're
joke
asking
right
for
there.
it. Oh, I love dad jokes.
You know where you can get some more some bad dad jokes is from our Edge newsletter. Just kidding. Actually, we're sending great information to you each and every week about our recent interviews, who we're going to be interviewing, as well as some of these news stories and much more. So why not sign up for the newsletter today? Just text to the number 22828, the word Edge Talk. Don't do it while you drive, or at least give it to your passenger. And you can join right there, or go over to edgeofthewebradio.com and join our newsletter. We're just sending out digital nuggets of gold each and every week. So join the newsletter and join the Edge Nation. So with that, follow all the featured trending topics over at Edge of the Web Radio. But now let's deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Max Yoder, co-founder and CEO at Lessonly.
So the deep voice guy, man.
That was special.
It always just brings a smile as soon as you get introduced by the movie credit reader.
Yeah, I liked my face just kind of floating there. That was sweet.
We always want. I got to figure out a way to give a bit of a ringtone app to our guests so they can have that on either their wives or significant others.
Press the button. Here I am. I've arrived.
You can actually have a soundtrack as you walk into a room.
Yeah, I got a kind of high-pitched voice, so I like somebody reading my name out in the deeper voice.
All right, so for our audience who has not met Max, sorry,
It's okay. That was kind of fun.
Yeah, met Max Yoder. He is actually the CEO and co-founder of Lessonly, a powerfully simple training software that helps millions of people learn, practice, and do better work. They're actually here in locally based in Indianapolis, Indiana. So it was great to be able to have Max come on the show. Every day he's grateful for that he got cut from the basketball team two years in a row.
Yes, 6th and 7th grade. That was a blessing. Same guy, same room.
Really?
Deja vu. Walked in. He's like, I'm doing it again. He didn't say that, but it was like he was literally in the same chair. I walk in, I get cut the first year. Next year, same chair. Walk in, get cut. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again.
So lessons learned from that. Now, how do you use that to apply to your career?
Well, I appreciated it because it helped me focus.
Yeah.
When you're told you're not that good at something, which I wasn't that good at sports. I was in sports because my friends were there. You know, so it was just following my friends, and they were all pretty good. You know, they had natural athleticism. That was not my gift. So it pushed me to try other things. Pushed me to try video editing.
Mm-hmm.
I got to build my first computer shortly after that, which
Sweet.
is not as hard as it sounds. You know,
Right.
you buy the parts, you make sure you don't have static on your hands, and you plug them in, and then you hope that it turns on. And then when it does turn on, it is really cool. So I did that, you know, made music, just pushed me to do the things that I was actually put on this earth for, as opposed to things that my friends like to do. So what a gift. I'm very grateful to the coach for cutting me. I hope other kids get cut every year all the time.
But they can't be fragile snowflakes either. They got to be able to do something with that, right?
Well, when that helps you not be fragile.
Yep,
That helps you not be fragile. I mean, it builds some strength.
Yeah,
You're not going to get everything you want.
We talked right before the show about some of these acute, quick pain points to be able to learn as you're going, as opposed to everybody gets a trophy and you're not learning any type of stress-produced honing
Growth.
of your. Yeah, absolutely.
Stress is not a net negative. Stress can be very, very, very positive. But I think we look at it as a negative thing, and I think that is a mistake.
Right. No, I completely agree. So your first book, speaking of maybe a little bit of stress going through. And
Yeah, that was stress. That was chronic stress. Not the good part. Not the good kind.
Your first book, Do Better Work, was actually published in February of this year. So before we get into the book,
Yep.
which we want to dive into a lot of different recesses here, tell us about your backstory post getting cut from basketball, right?
Yeah.
And why you decided to actually start Lessonly.
Yeah. So I started a business before Lessonly called Quipple, and Quipple was surveying and polling software. So I'll take you a little farther back. I got out of school, 2010, Indiana University, and started working for Chris Baggett at Compendium. It was a great gig.
Yeah.
Learned a ton. Was there for a year and a half. Told Chris about it 6 months in, I want to start a business. He said, save your money. You can do whatever you want if you can save your money. So my first obligation was pay off student loans.
There you go.
Worked hard on that, and then save. So I went to a state school, which was great. So you know the loans were not astronomical.
Sure.
So save and put away, and I got to save 61 cents for every dollar while I was at Compendium once I got my student loans paid off.
Holy crap.
And that was just about having $130 in your wallet every week.
Right.
And when the $130 is gone, you're done. So it wasn't fun for my girlfriend at the time, and she went through kind of the not fun parts of entrepreneurship. My wife now gets to go through the fun parts, and I remind her of that frequently. Because $130 is like a dinner. or a dinner and some drinks. You can
Absolutely.
really move on that. And then, the Lyft and Uber home. So it was a boring time in that respect, but it helped me kind of save. And then I started a business called Quipple. Quipple was surveying and polling software. So trying to understand your audience.
Sure.
Didn't have a great business model for that. So ultimately ended up shutting that down a year and 9 months in and starting Lessonly with Mike Fitzgerald, Christian Anderson, and Eric Tobias.
Oh, very cool.
They all had day jobs. I did not. They had capital and mentorship. I did not, but I had time. So that was a great deal. Connor Burt joined me on that partnership, and he really kind of since the beginning oversaw revenue. I oversaw product, and now we have 113 people. It's almost 7 years later.
Yeah, it's a great story of success here for Indianapolis in the tech community, but also there's a lot of tech software that can't find a particular home sometimes. From a utilitarian standpoint. It's a little bit sometimes a little bit you gotta create your audience before they really realize what it is. This Lessonly, it comes from a true need of making simple training. And give us some of the outliers of why Lessonly is so unique, and how'd you come to actually devise this, because it makes so much simple sense. But what is the employer getting from this, and what are the trainees getting from your platform?
Yeah, so when we entered the training software space, we didn't know what we didn't know, which was a great benefit, because there was so much dogma and there was so much there was just made up rules. And they were being followed as though they were doctrine and gospel, and hell was for anybody who didn't go that path. But we were like, let's just try this. This is what we'd want. So we made a lesson builder in Lessonly. So a lot of learning management systems or training softwares, you build the lessons outside in a separate piece of software, and then you upload them into the training software. It's like, well, why? Why can't we just build it in the thing? Simple, right? We just didn't know any better. So we built that. And we started selling it to people who didn't have the resources or the L&D backgrounds on their teams, but they still wanted to train people. And we were like, hey, if you can type, you can teach. You're constantly teaching people every day. We're just giving you a more efficient way of doing it. And what I mean by teaching people is you're sitting down with them and saying, do this, then this, then this, then the other thing. It's like process. So let's get the fundamentals right. And let's throw out all of the stuff about how you need to have a learning and development person for it to go through in order for it to be effective. Because what we were finding is the quicker somebody got access to good information, the quicker we could improve it. You talked about agile, right? Let's get it out to the population, learn what's working, learn what isn't, learn what needs to be changed and improved, and then let's do that. And guess what? Very quickly we can rapidly develop a really good piece of training without going to the third-party L&D expert who takes 6 months. It's speed optimized. That's why we started winning. We said speed optimized, and we said let's give people access. That's search. So you can go into Lessonly and say, I forgot how to do that thing. Quick search. Oh, there it is. That's how to do that thing. I'm going to go do it. And then what are the analytics? What's the data you're getting behind that? Oh, this is working. This isn't. This is what people are searching for that they're not finding. All of these things were very, very helpful for creating an agile training system. We now call it the Better Work Training Method. So it's a 6-step process that we can help anybody create training for their teams. And we think training is so darn important because if you want people to do really good work or better work, as our kind of mission is, it's super important that you tell them what that looks like. If I don't tell you what I need from you, I shouldn't expect you to do it. If you have to guess, you're probably going to guess differently than my hopes and dreams, right? So I should spell out what I need you to do. Doesn't mean you can't be creative with it, but let's get the fundamentals laid bare so that you know what you need, what's expected of you. You're probably going to do it then. That's what we do with training. Is we help people do better work because we know it helps them live better lives. And when I say better lives, they go home with that positivity. They go home with that energy of I did a good job today. It's not fun to do a bad job at work. It's really fun to do a good job at work. And either way, you take the energy home with you. It's really tough to turn that off, right? To walk out the door and say it was a bad day, but I'm going to go home with a bright smile on my face. It tends not to be the case. So let's have more bright smiles on people's faces.
Done. All right, drop the mic. All right, so let's back up here through Lessonly, through the deployment of Lessonly, and Lessonly in its own right is a learning tool unto itself for the software because you're learning from everybody who's using the software. It's a very robust listening tool on how to evolve its own software. Right.
You bet.
So you've got that, and you found yourself in the space where the training of the subject matter wasn't nearly as much as important as understanding how people want to learn, but on top of that, how people want to collaborate and interact with each other in that workspace. So you've learned with the software, but you also learned just growing your company to 113 people. You learned a whole other realm of how to interact with your team members.
You bet.
And you're also listening because you're kind of wired for that mode of intake. Now you're listening to what it means to be a team member, and that's what got you to the book. Right?
You bet. You nailed it. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so we develop relationships with people, right? And when you do that, you can seek and give clarity with them. You can learn what's working, what isn't, and that is really, I think, what makes the world go round. That's our management model, Leslie. First, you develop the relationship, so there's trust and mutual respect. We call that camaraderie, and then you seek and give clarity. Seeking clarity is, hey, how are things going? Giving clarity is, here's what I need, or here's what's changing, or here's what's happening, here's what impacts you.
Right.
So this book's about, and I got it right here.
There it is.
Boom. So camaraderie and clarity, creating progress. When we have camaraderie, mutual trust and respect, and we have clarity, we know what matters, why it matters, how to do it, we start to make more progress. So this book breaks down 8 behaviors that lead to camaraderie and clarity so that we can make more progress. It's basically a guide to being a good teammate. And everybody who in a team or in a relationship is a teammate. It could be your wife or your husband. That's teamwork, right?
Right.
These are behaviors that work at home and at work to make more progress together.
Okay, you know that you're not walking out of here with that book.
No, this is for you.
Okay, very good.
100% for you.
Because you just gave me a roadmap to success, and I want to make sure that the wife knows that I'm investing in that.
I cannot wait.
All right, but here's the deal, is that what you just talked about here was something very, very important about the team members and giving a guide of how to be a good team member. There's a responsibility, especially in the knowledge industry that we're in. There's a responsibility not only on the employer to set the stage to be able to have a good resource set of materials and a good learning environment, but there's a responsibility on the team member to be able to collaborate and not just take, but also give back into the system, right?
You bet. Clarity is a two-way street. If you don't have clarity, you need to go get it. You can't sit back and go, well, nobody gave me clarity, therefore I shouldn't have to do my job.
Right.
Camaraderie is a two-way street. You show mutual trust. You show trust and respect to get trust and respect, right? You demonstrate. You behave in a certain way in order to earn trust and respect. This is all these behaviors are on the individual. It is not about waiting for anybody else to do anything. I think we have a plague in this world of waiting for any of other people to do things. Well, they need to get their act together, and they need to get their act together because I'm good. It's BS. It's BS. If you just look inward and say, where do I struggle? Right. Where do I have gaps that I want to fill? That if I filled, I could be a better person. That I could help my teammates more. If you work there, you're going to inspire and motivate other people to do so. What we tend to do instead, though, is say that person needs to do this, and they should do that, and they need, like I said, get their act together. Right. Let's just look inward because we don't have our act together. You and I both have ways to grow, big ways to grow. If we look inward and we do that, we'll inspire and motivate other people to do so.
So therein lies a particular risk for maybe some immature workers or teammates to not want to, do the work of self-introspection, right? But on top of that, there is a bit of a reckoning if I am the weak cog here, right? Then there's the obvious responsibility that all of a sudden is blatant is that now I got to fix it. And there lies a particular motivation issue. Is if they're not wanting to fix it, if they're wanting to do minimum viable work or something like that, this system that you're talking about, this almost like this teammate type of contract or engagement, agreed upon rules of engagement inside of the team framework. You're going to find some people that don't want to rise to the occasion to give back and be able to invest with the other team members, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's psychology. You're going to find
110%.
Okay.
I don't think that should stop us from doing it for the rule of folks who do want to make those investments.
No.
So there's the 20% exception, the 80% rule.
Right.
And that's, I would think about the whole world is are we arguing the rule? Because if so, let's acknowledge that, or arguing the exception. And I think the exception is people don't want to grow. That's my experience. And they kind of want to hold back and they don't want to indulge in kind of, hey, I want to get better.
Right.
The book talks about in chapter 7, it's called Get More Agreements. So if we have an agreement with an individual of what we need them to do, and they do not meet that agreement, we have ground to stand in to say, you have not met the agreement. We had this step and that step that you agreed to take. It was a shared plan. We came up with it together, and then we fist bumped or hand shook or whatever.
Right.
You can't have that many of those conversations if that person shouldn't be there anymore. We're not about being cuddly and saying, hey, everybody has a chance to grow.
Right.
You need to do your job. And if you make an agreement with me, I expect you to live up to that agreement.
Right.
And if you're consistently letting me down on those agreements, we're going to have a very difficult conversation about your tenure at this company. And I don't know how else to help somebody other than setting the stage. And I've done this poorly in the past, which is why it means so much to me to do it well. When I've not set clear agreements with individuals, and then I've been frustrated with their output, and then I've let them go, that isn't fair. And if I could go back and do that again, I'd do it differently. I didn't have the experience. It's not an excuse. I just didn't have the experience. It's reality. Now that I do, I find it to be it's my duty. get agreements with individuals. If somebody comes to me and they're frustrated with a teammate, I get to look at them and go, do you have agreements with them about the things you're frustrated about, or do you just have unspoken expectations?
Oh, wow.
Because that's what it usually is. It's unspoken expectations. Well, I want them to do it and they should just know. This book could very well be called They Shouldn't Just Know, because it is just not fair. It's not fair. We have this thing called the curse of knowledge. Once I learn something, it's hard to remember that not everybody else has learned it too. So I begin to act as though everybody knows the same things I do.
Okay.
So I'll use jargon and I'll leave out impertinent details. Basically, I'm prone to under communication. I'm prone to not shedding light on everything. It's a bias of my brain, which means you need to take responsibility by asking clarifying questions, and I need to be cognizant of the fact that I'm going to leave things out. So I should ask people, hey, what'd you hear me say? Because I want to make sure I was really clear.
Right.
We're all under the curse of knowledge. So when we expect people to do things, we're living under the curse of knowledge. You might not have learned what I learned. And what kind of posture is it for me to go, I was lucky enough to learn this thing, and you weren't, and I'm going to shame you for it? I was lucky enough to learn it.
Use it as a divide or what have you.
Yeah, it's a sword. It's like, that's not fair. What is fair is to get clear, and then if you don't do it, then I can be frustrated. But if you do it, I can celebrate with you. And that's the cool thing.
Together.
Together. We both were on the same page, and we knew what we needed to do, and bang, we did it. That's so fun.
Well, okay, you're preaching to the choir here, and you're actually, as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing a number of my own mistakes as being a business owner.
Sure.
Because I have always leaned toward, with this bias, expecting intrinsic motivation. Okay, and this is where I'm getting overclimped. This is where I've really had, as an employer, a challenge, because you want to be able to help and document. At the same time, you have this internal expectation of they should at least know this, right? But at the end of the day, unless you're painting the entire road out, right, you cannot hold an employee accountable to these things that you know. Ultimately, it rests on you to make sure that everybody has a roadmap, everybody has a clear set of expectations and structure in which they are to be evaluated by.
You bet. We're gonna really minimize diversity and inclusion if we expect people to know what we know, because they're probably gonna come from similar backgrounds as us to know what we know, and that isn't fair. So what I love about the chapter that I mentioned earlier about getting more agreements is there's going forward statements. So it's if you're, let's say you're my teammate, Aaron, and I see you behave a certain way, instead of being frustrated with you, I can say, hey, Aaron, going forward, can we do it this way?
Right.
And you can say, oh, that works for me, or slight modulation, can we do it a little bit differently? Then I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally fine. Sure. So then we get the agreement. Well, now we have common ground to stand on. If you do it, high five. If you don't do it, I can say, hey, don't forget our agreement. And if you don't do it again, I can say, I'm getting a little frustrated. This is the second time we made an agreement. We made the time. We documented it. Right. Because I want you to win with me. I don't need to lay everything out, but when I see you not doing something that I want you to do, then I can use a going forward statement. If going forward, can we do it this way? But I can't get mad at you at that point because I never told you. Right. And that happens a lot, where we get mad at people that we never told them something. It happens in relationships at home. It happens in relationships at work.
No, absolutely. And along with that same line of going forward, you have now a buy-in. You have a buy-in from the individual.
Precisely.
That one you were potentially at conflict with. You're pointing to the future. You're agreeing and modulating based on it, so it's going to serve both parties. Yep. But you're on a road together, as opposed to a constant coming back to the same point and then evaluating based on potentially unspoken and spoken issues. And you're not working together. You're in that space of a continual. Okay, we're back here again.
We're arguing.
Right, you're arguing. So turning conflict into compassion and progress. So this is a big portion of your book, a big concept.
The biggest chapter,
So psychologically, humans, and I don't mean to be negative Nelly here, but literally we are wired to conflict.
Yeah.
We are wired, it's easier to conflict than it is to find solutions and be able to move with individuals. The collaboration can be, at least on its surface, quite challenging and convoluted, and it's a lot easier just to blame, just to point fingers, and ultimately it's a protective instinct. Yep. Right? So how do you, as a manager, change that conflict into compassion? That's one step along the way, and then go to progress. How do you do that?
Yeah, you have to model the behavior they want people to see, and that was a lesson that a woman, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, taught me. So she's a neuroanatomist, studies the brain. She's a brilliant woman, and she spent time with me to help me understand that modeling is everything. If you want somebody to do something, you must do it. Why would you expect anybody to do something that you are not doing? And if you want other people to know that you're doing it, find somebody else on the team that's doing it and prop them up and shout them out. This person is a great example of something that I really care deeply about as a manager on this team.
Got it.
And here's why it matters to me that they do it. Other people take mental notes when you do that. So first and foremost, make it clear what you care about. Prop the people up who are doing those things. And if something isn't going well, sitting down with the individual and talking them through your observations, your feelings, your needs on the situation, is a compassionate thing to do. Because what's not compassionate is leaving somebody in the dark.
Right.
Hey, you're totally messing up and I'm not telling you. I wouldn't want anybody to do that to me. Would you want anybody to do that to you? No. Nobody wants that. But we do that all the time. We leave people in the dark about where they stand. So the chapter is so long because I was given the gift of the state of Marshall Rosenberg. He's a doctor as well. He wrote about this thing called nonviolent communication. And the idea is, hey, a lot of our communication can cause hurt and harm. And some of that hurt and harm sticks with you for a long time. So he wants to have nonviolent communication that is more compassionate and reduces hurt and harm, minimizes hurt and harm.
Yep.
An example of hurt and harm is if you ever had something said to you that you still think back to and say, wow, that still stings, that's hurt and harm. So nonviolent communication, I got to, the estate gave me permission to put it in the book and to put the model in the book. And I am so drawn to the model because it's just beautiful. It's been around for 50 years. And the idea is, let's talk about what we observe. Let's talk about our feelings about our observation. Let's talk about our needs and then our requests. So it's a framework for having a difficult conversation. And it's hard as heck because what we learn to do instead of observation is a fact. It's something that happened. Right. So if you were 5 minutes late and I say, hey, Aaron, you were 5 minutes late today, that's a fact. We could go back and play the tape and we'd see that. Right. If I said, Aaron, you were lazy today, that's not a fact. That's my evaluation.
And subjective at that.
It's subjective. Well, evaluations are always subjective. So he's like, let's get it into the universal. What are the observations that happened? And then the feelings are universal, not because you maybe have the same feeling as me, but because you know what the feeling I have is, which is frustrated or anxious or worried or overwhelmed. Right. You felt all those things before. That's the universal nature of them. So observations universal, feelings universal, the needs are universal. It's like, I need communication. So if you're going to be late, my request is next time, let me know in advance. Right. So observations, feelings, needs, requests. The book breaks them down. Rosenberg argued before he passed away in 2015 that, and he still argues today because his book's still a bestseller, which is so dang cool. Isn't that so cool?
Yeah,
to live on like that.
Yep.
He still argues that we never learn, we don't get a lot of education around our needs and our feelings. We don't have vocabulary for them, so we tend to say like, I'm mad or I'm angry, and those are kind of the feeling words we have. He gives you a whole vocabulary. I got to republish them in the book, and then he gives you a whole vocabulary for needs. And the needs are, our feelings are based on whether a need is being met or not met. So we feel frustrated when a need of ours is not being met. Maybe we need connection, and we're frustrated because we're not getting connection. Or maybe we're excited because we are getting connection. So the idea is a feeling is a representation of the underlying need. Okay. If you want belonging and you're not getting belonging, you're probably going to have a negative feeling. If you want belonging, you're getting, you have a positive. You get the idea.
Yep.
But we don't understand feelings. We don't get taught feelings, and we get taught a lot of other stuff in school, but it certainly isn't this. So our vocabulary isn't there. Our understanding of them isn't there. So what we tend to do is judge other people and use evaluations. That's our way of showing what we need is to judge other people. Well, that person's rude. That person's a jerk. Right. That thing isn't good enough. Right. You know, it's like that's what we've learned instead of actually communicating what we need. And his argument is the more we communicate what we need, the more we can reach one another, hear one another, and make progress together.
Wow. So basically what you're saying is that we have an entire new vernacular that we can use.
Yeah.
And we set the playing field on the fair playing field where everybody knows the ground rules, as opposed to coming at it with pain and hurt and
creating more pain and hurt, right?
Yeah, and a rudimentary concept because we've never learned. It's kind of like you ever heard of financial peace from what's his name?
Dave Ramsey?
Dave Ramsey, yeah. So they have an entire financial peace university just teaching the basics of saving, the basics of...
It's all basics.
Absolutely. But they don't teach that in school whatsoever.
Nope.
So as an adult, you go to that and it's just mind-numbing, or mind-blowing, I should say, how it just kind of falls into place. Wow, this is a whole nother way. Simple way to look at finances. Same thing with conflict is if you don't know the ropes, you don't know what the true vernacular is, how you can express expectations without confrontation, right, then you're always going to be armed in emotion, and you're always going to be triggering the other person just by delivering a request sheathed in conflict, right?
Yeah, you're going to have a sword or a shield, and you're either going to be really defensive or you're going to be defensive by being offensive.
Oh, geez.
And when I meet folks, a Like I just spent a weekend at a bachelor party, and you could tell the folks who were really there, and they dropped their swords and shields, and just wanted to get to know you. You know, they didn't need to impress you.
Right.
They didn't need to prove you wrong.
Right.
And then the other folks who maybe had a sword or a shield up. And I really love the folks who are able to drop. It's hard, and you know, there's days when I have my sword and shield up. It's not like everybody. But when you drop your sword and your shield, people don't know what to do because they're very used to a fight. So that when you're just like, "How are you?"
Right.
You know, that my friend Kevin Bailey says, "More love, not less," and I love that phrase.
He's
More
awesome.
love, not less. It's a beautiful thing, and we just need more love, not less. And I think we got a lot of anger and hate, and that is an underlying need not being met.
Boy, you better believe it. And it does come to the employers to be able to embrace that concept as part of the new culture of the knowledge industry, but actually larger than that. Employers have to know what that vernacular is to be able to not only listen and learn from their employees, but also set the ground rules of how to act, because eventually there's always going to be a conflict.
You bet. Conflict is inevitable.
Absolutely.
Let's use it to our advantage. It's information.
Right.
I think we think conflict is a sign of dysfunction. It's not. Conflict is a sign that there's somebody in the room. Because you have conflict in you.
Oh, yeah.
Inner conflict, and so do
Absolutely.
I. So if we can't solve our inner conflict, what makes us think that we're going to have conflict when we bring 80 or 100 people together, or even 8 people together? We all have inner conflict. We get 2 people together, there's going to be conflict along the way. It's information, though. If it helps me understand you better and we use it that way, then we're using conflict in the right way. But if we use conflict as something to be repressed or avoided or argued over, I don't think we're using it in the right way. Let's use it as information.
It's almost like a watershed moment that you can absolutely learn as long as you have a roadmap out of, you drop in your defensive posture, but you also have a roadmap to get through that. That's the other thing.
You do. You need that.
You have to have that roadmap.
We just don't teach people it. And I so badly want that to change. My wife's in the Department of Education, and she is very committed to helping me in small ways and ideally large ways over time just teach kids. And it's not, I don't think I'm the best person to teach them. I think there's people out there who know this a lot better than I do. But to be somebody who spurs teaching to kids, because I know that kids every day will deal with conflict.
Right.
I don't know that every day they're going to deal with physics or experience physics in such a way that they need to solve any problems.
Right.
You know, we experience physics all day and time, but every day they're going to need to understand how to navigate conflict, but we're not teaching it to them.
I don't know. My 8-year-old keeps on falling down, and he doesn't know what the hell's going on there.
It wasn't my best example, but you get it. You get it. We teach a lot of things that we could maybe reduce those a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not saying take them away, and make a little more time for conflict management and appreciation. Do we have time for this?
Yeah, go.
On the other side of the spectrum is appreciation, showing gratitude and love. So first, a situation in conflict-oriented is when something isn't going like we want it to. A moment of appreciation and gratitude, something is going we want it to. We struggle at both ends.
Yep.
People struggle to appreciate their gratitude and their appreciation just as much as they struggle with conflict. Not everyone. Some people struggle more with one or the other. But at both ends, it is tough to show love, and it's tough to deal with things that are stressful and conflict-oriented. And I think if we optimize for both of them, we will have a richer and brighter world. Because when we show appreciation, Chapter 5 is called Highlight What's Working. The idea is we think that things that are working are kind of known quantities. Their box is already checked, their problem's already solved. That's working. So we tend not to talk about the things that are working because we presume that everybody already knows it's working. But the reality of a team is only a few people will know something is working, and if we don't share it and highlight that it's working, more people can't take advantage of it. So highlighting what's working is all about making time to share the things that are working, because what we tend to do instead is talk about problems all the time. If I told you let's have a meeting and only thing we're going to talk about is what's working on the team, you'd be like, that sounds like a waste of time. It isn't a waste of time. What it does is it elevates what's working so more people can learn from it and use it. We don't do it enough. Appreciation is an element of sharing what's working. There's a whole method called appreciative inquiry that I talk about in the book is what's going well and how do we do more of it? That's the key question. So if I ended a meeting and I said, what went well in here? And how do we do more of it? And we went around the table and everybody shared one thing that went well. Somebody says, I really appreciated that everybody spoke during this meeting. Somebody else in the room goes, I didn't even notice that, but now I do realize it and I appreciated it too. They're a little more inclined to make sure the next meeting more people speak.
Absolutely. And you're just opening up.
You're opening up good ideas.
Absolutely. And that entire contribution, you're giving everybody the ability and the right to speak into that discussion.
What went well?
Right.
And how do we do more of it?
But you're also giving everybody that level playing field as well, where the people that and the dynamics of a meeting, right? You always have the type A's, the alphas that are going to be changing and steering. But if you're actually giving everybody the opportunity to collaborate now everybody's kind of been risen to a level of value.
They matter.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
matter.
Interesting. Well, I want to swing this back around finally to a last point here because it's incredible what you're. These are it sounds so simple and so basic.
Yep.
But at the same
not
time,
happening.
it's not happening in the work culture. It's not happening from the employers and the managers. It's also not happening from the team members, where there is an expectation of performance, but there is a responsibility on those team members to be able to help in these particular components. Right?
All of us have a responsibility. Yep.
And sometimes that doesn't get really known from the employee side of things. And you need a framework to be able to work from. And this is a great book to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Oh no, you're more than welcome. But one of the things I want to swing back around to is this concept of, would this book have come from you had it not been from your process of building software, learning, training, and basically mining the process of software development, SaaS development? Would this have ever existed?
Without lessonly, no.
Right.
No. I mean, I think a lot of it came from what we learned from our internal team dynamics. So like the first chapter, I talk about, hey, if we could just look around a team and say what behaviors make progress and which behaviors create setbacks.
Right.
And then we could just kind of pull together the progress-driven behaviors. That's what I tried to do here, is just list the behaviors that lead to progress most consistently.
Right.
And the things that lead to setbacks, probably the opposite of those behaviors. So let's focus on this stuff over here. Team dynamics, our customers. So our customers introduced me to appreciative inquiry. One of our customers was like, hey, Max, you talk about appreciation a lot. You should learn about appreciative inquiry. That's the whole chapter of Highlight What's Working, is all about this thing that our customer introduced us to. And then our software, speed optimized software, where you create things and you share before you're ready. The second chapter is all about sharing before you're ready. So it came from kind of three spots. Internal team dynamics, our customers, and then the things that our software was able to do that we saw value in. We were like, let's maybe that applies more broadly than just our software.
Right. That's the thing, and that's where I was really getting to. And we hear that every once in a while from developers that have actually developed SaaS platforms or technology, especially whenever we're interviewing contributors into some of the marketing software and behavior analytics software. There are these learned process, these learned lessons that all of a sudden evolve into something. It's not a non sequitur, but it goes into a cultural scenario. Yeah. It goes into employee dynamics, and that's what's really cool about software development.
It's very cool.
You can put some good concepts in, and all of a sudden you have this additional outpouring of opportunity to really use it for betterment of team building and communication, as opposed to just the monetized platform. Right?
Yep. The little lessons can get bigger, and they can apply more broadly.
That's cool.
And they often do.
So we certainly appreciate the time today. We always want to recommend our listeners to go check out softwares and the platforms that we're promoting. But before I want to get some promotions out for Lessonly, I want to ask you a couple quick questions.
Please.
We always ask this of our guests, and oh boy, I tell you, we could have gone a long time with this conversation.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it.
But I got to ask of you, what bugs you about your industry right now?
Yeah, I think the crushing it culture is really dangerous. The crushing it of, hey, you're either crushing it or you're not. You're either kind of knocking it out of the park or you're not. It just makes people feel, it makes people put their shields and swords up because there's nobody's actually crushing it. It's a facade. And if anybody is, they're the far extreme exception. So that means people have to be defensive about where they're at, and they either fake it too. And what I like is vulnerability of, and we got some things to figure out. Who doesn't? I'm proud of these parts. These parts need work. That's reality of every business. The crushing it culture makes it seem like we just got this whole thing figured out, and shame on you, or it's too bad for you that you're not as cool as we are. I think that creates a lot of negative behavior.
Nothing against Gary Vee, but I mean, it's most people. That's an anomaly, and you're never going to be able to have that as a continued behavior for a very long time.
No.
There's a mixture of all of this.
We're not perfect. We're not perfect.
No,
and we're not. Yeah. So that bothers me. I like to see less of it.
Very cool. Well, conversely, what inspires you? What makes you happy and excites you about your industry that you're in right now?
I think people are really hungry to take the responsibility for their own actions. I think when I speak to groups, they are hungry and ready to do it. They just need more guidance as to how. The big why and what of what matters, responsibility. Why does it matter? Here's why it matters. How do we do it? I think people need more of it. And it excites me that people are ready on the what and the why, and they just want more how. Because one person at a time is how you make any damn of a difference. And I just want one person at a time for us to take a little more responsibility for what we're doing and point of fewer fingers. That excites me that people have an appetite for it, and they do. I see it all the time.
Very cool. Well, we had a conversation. Last time that we were in here, we talked about your embrace of radical candor in your workplace, and I think doing better work is a natural evolution of your pursuit of what you're trying to do at that one person strategy is to be able to give back to people tools that they can use, as opposed to, I mean, we see so many books out in the space that are just, they're pontificating, or they're this ethereal mess of warm and fuzzies that are out there. This is practical. These are things.
The whole point.
These are things that team members can use, executives can use, and if they're not paying attention to affirmation, if they're not paying attention to conflict resolution with a mutual direction after that, then they're not really managing the way we need to be managed in this era now.
Yeah, we can do this. We just think that obvious equals happening. We think that there's an equal sign between obvious. Oh, that's obvious, so it must be, but it's not happening.
Right.
So I say obvious doesn't equal happening, and until it does, I'm going to keep saying obvious stuff, because until it's happening, I could give a hoot if it's obvious. It ain't happening.
See, and honestly, on a personal note, Max, that goes home to me, because I've always been I've suffered from this expectation of intrinsic motivation. I've suffered from this expectation of they should know their job, they should be able to do their job.
I know that feeling.
That's tough to get through, and with roadmaps like this, and just a bit more of a clarion call of what the responsibility of the one that is cursed with the knowledge, right? They got to be able to set the roadmap. Otherwise, it's on you. It's on the person. You can't set expectations without actually laying it all out.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. I'm super glad that you feel that way, and don't beat yourself up, because you know what? Everybody has done it. All that matters right now is what we do next.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of moving on, you also gave us a great fun fact to kind of end the show on. So your dad owns a funeral home.
Yep.
And how many dead bodies have you actually seen?
Quite a lot. Hundreds and hundreds.
Oh, my God.
I mean, he owns a funeral home.
Sure.
And we could do 3 funerals a day on a kind of a good day.
Right.
And usually it's 1 or 2. And I wasn't in there all the time.
Sure.
But when I was a kid, we shared a driveway. So my house was connected to the funeral's parking lot.
Yep.
But then it was connected to the funeral home. So I'd walk over and say, "Dad, I'm ready to eat," and then he'd come over and make us lunch, because he'd just walk across.
Sure.
And he would usually be, doing his thing.
In the midst of.
Yeah.
So it's a regular topic at the dinner table.
It is, yeah, and it's great to learn about death at an early age, because you learn to take the bull by the horns, because people who don't expect to die all the time.
No way, really?
I know that's obvious, but I don't think it registers.
No, it does not.
That we are all so susceptible to death, and when you hear that over and over again, it can be a very potent motivator to just get after it.
Mm-hmm. Get after it, but at the same time, you have that realization that it's this is temporary, and we all hear the cliche, but any moment in time, so you better not trip over and invest in that conflict, right?
Talk to me.
You can't invest in the conflict without a resolution out of it, and it gets back to your book. Sorry.
That's okay.
The point is that if we have this type of impermanence, right, which we all do, 100% that we're going to be able to come across death at one point in time in our life, right?
Yep.
We got to make
Stats
sure
are in.
that the time that we spend with employees, time that we spend with our family, you're putting into it much more than you're getting out, right?
Yeah, it's a great thing to make an investment in people. It permeates.
Yeah.
We have limited time. Let's invest in people. Let's help them grow and thrive and flourish. That's a good thing to do with your time.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, rock and roll, man. I really appreciate it. Hey, is there anything that we can promote for you?
If you want to look at Lessonly's training software, it's www.lessonly.com, lessonly.com. And then if you want to pick up the book, it's www.dobetter.work. So instead of .com, it's .work. dobetter.work.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, audiobook. I did the narration, so that's fun. And the physical copy if you want that too, or the ebook.
Sweet.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, more, and we'll certainly have the links to the show, links to everything on the show notes. Any final words to our audience regarding doing better work?
Yeah, it is. If you want to see it, be it. If you want to see something in the world, go out and be that thing in the world, because that's the only way you make any positive change to the world is you inspire and motivate others. You just do it. So go out and do the things that you want to see other people do, and no doubt more people will do them. And even if they don't, you've done your job.
Well, that's awesome. Out of the word of Max, you better go listen and better go do, because you know what, nobody else is going to do it for you. Take the bull by the horns. you have a responsibility in your team. You have a responsibility to your team members. So learn the framework, learn the tools that you need for success. So thank you so much, Max.
Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate the conversation. And we always want to ask you back because, I mean, you're just dumping nuggets of knowledge on a regular basis.
Thank
More
you.
than welcome. All right, so thanks for listening to Edge of the Web Radio. Special thank you to our colleagues over at Site Strategics, as well as especially our guest, Max Yoder. Be sure to check out all the must-see videos and audio over at edgeofthewebradio.com. Check out all the blog content, all the special transcripts. There's a really cool tool over at Site Strategics. So you got to jump in because we've got navigable transcripts per timestamp. That's pretty cool. But check out all the information over at edgeofthewebradio.com, edgeofthewebradio.com. We'll talk to you next week. Do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. Bye-bye.